This is the Regained Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 39, The Calorie Myth with Jonathan Bailor. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com. This is the Regained Wellness Podcast, and welcome to episode 39, 39er, with an amazing guest today named Jonathan Bailor, who's all over the place. He's on TV. He does TED Talks. He's got one of my favorite books I've ever read called The Calorie Myth. And we break down today a lot of what goes behind this idea of, is it calories in, calories out, and calculations for your body to determine how many calories it needs, and the myth behind all that sort of thing, and how your body is not a calculator. It's a biological organism that adapts and follows homeostasis and keeps a balance. And Jonathan shares a ton of great information, as well as like the way you want to be eating, foods you want to be including, things you want to be avoiding. And I don't want to waste any more time, and we'll get right to it with Jonathan Bailor. My guest today is Jonathan Bailor, who is a New York Times bestselling author and internationally recognized wellness expert who specializes in using modern science and technology to simplify health. Jonathan has collaborated with top scientists for more than 10 years to analyze and apply over 1,300 studies. His work has been endorsed by top doctors and scientists from Harvard Medical School, Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, and the UCLA. Welcome, Jonathan. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing real well, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I want to get right into it with your book, which is honestly one of my absolute favorites, The Calorie Myth. And in it, there's an interesting study, I believe from North Carolina, that says that calorie intake has gone up around 570 calories per day from 1977 to 2006. So there's an obesity problem we're aware of, but shouldn't we actually be a lot heavier than we really are?
You're exactly right, Jamie. In fact, after the manuscript was finalized for The Calorie Myth, another study came out, which was even more interesting, which was done by a financial institution, Credit Suisse. And they did an analysis on the economic impact of sugar globally. And one of the data points they mentioned in that report, I believe this came out in 2014, and it's available for free online, is that the average American male is over-consuming 1,000 calories
Yikes.
per day by their estimates. And they just skip over that. They're just like, yep, and that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
But if we sort of pause for a second, that means the average American male, according to the calorie math we've all been taught, should be gaining 2 pounds per week until they weigh 3,000 pounds.
Yeah,
so how does that work? Right?
Yeah. I find it interesting as I was a personal trainer for a while, still am. I think you were as well. And there's a lot of this idea of the body as being a calculator, which isn't exactly the case. The body's more of a compensator. Can you explain a little about that?
There's a really, really fabulous book if folks get a chance to check it out. It's called Anti-Fragile. It's very esoteric, but it's a great book. And in that book, the author describes the difference between machines and biology. And there's a big difference between those two, right? So for example, if you look at any mechanical object, the more you use it, it gets weaker. Like that's the nature of it, right? The more you drive your car, driving your car does not make it stronger in any way, shape, or form. But like, let's look at our muscles, for example. If you don't use your muscles, they get weaker. Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, there's a key difference between that which is biological and that which is mechanical or that which is mathematical. They're not the same things. They're different things, right? So while it might be fun to think of the body and simple to think of the body in terms of math, I mean, it's just wrong. The body isn't mathematical. It's not mechanistic. It's biological. And the way biological organisms work is they seek to maintain balance. They're dynamic systems. So if you drink more water, you don't need to think about it. You're just going to go to the bathroom more, right? And if you sleep less one night, you don't have to think about it. You're just going to be more tired the next night. And the way your brain and hormones and gut are designed to work and are intended to work is when you eat the proper quality of foods that don't break down those internal balance mechanisms. Yes, calories exist, and yes, they need to be in balance, but that should happen automatically, just like it does for your blood pressure or your blood sugar, for example.
Right. It's like with, say, like we don't have to worry about our balance of like how our body uses vitamin C or whatnot, and calories are the same thing. What talk a little bit about what set point is.
Set point is the abstraction for this balancing system. So one way to the set point is the point at which the body's trying to balance. So another way to think about the set point is we humans all have about the same set point body temperature, right? 98.6 degrees. So if you walk into a hot room, your body will automatically do things to try to keep you at 98.6 degrees. Same thing if you go into a cold room. And if you get sick and your body breaks down and you don't heal it, that set point will change. It might be 101 degrees. We call that a fever.
Yeah.
And that's your body is now, quote unquote, balancing itself around a different set point because something is wrong with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have similar things. So we have a blood pressure set point. We have a blood sugar set point. We have a respiratory rate set point, right? You go for a jog, your breathing rate goes up for a while, but then it comes back down. So when we say set point in terms of your body weight, it just means we all have a level of body fatness that's both dependent on our genetics and our behaviors that our brain seeks to maintain. And there are specific hormones and specific receptors that talk about, quote unquote, talk about, hey, here's how much energy you have stored. So here's how much food you should be eating to keep that at balance. So that set point is that, quote unquote, weight or body composition that no matter how hard we try to diet or how hard we try to exercise in terms of cutting calories, our body will fight us to try to maintain that set point.
Right, right. So when people are like, most people's goals with exercise is to lose weight. No surprises there. When people lose weight and they lose a lot of weight, they think they're losing fat. What's actually happening?
If what you're doing is just depriving yourself of energy, so if you're taking the same diet that made you fat and sick, and you're just saying, I'm just going to eat less of that, what happens is the first thing is your body slows down. So this is why you feel like garbage and your brain works like garbage. And fundamentally, the approach will not work for 95.4% of us long term, because you can't feel terrible and hungry and crabby and mentally foggy for the rest of your life. That's no way to live. No. So, but after that, if you are in a caloric deficit, your body will, so it'll slow down first, and then it will work to burn off everything. And this includes muscle tissue. And in fact, some studies have shown that in certain cases, in addition to water weight, which is, of course, shed easily, that muscle tissue your burning of muscle can make up about 50 to 70% of your weight loss, at least early on. Because it intuitively makes sense that if your body is in a shortage of energy, and here you have this muscle tissue, which is incredibly wasteful from an energy perspective, right? Having 50 extra pounds of muscle on your body that you don't need. If you're starving, your body's like, get the heck out of here, right? Absolutely. I don't want this stuff. So it burns off the muscle. It will, of course, burn off some fat, but depending on your hormonal balance, it may even preferentially burn off that muscle. And there's actually been studies done, they could never do these on humans, and some would argue they shouldn't do them on animals, where they've actually engineered animals that are so resistant to burning fat that they will actually cannibalize their internal organs and die before they burn off fat in an energy-deprived state.
Wow. Nuts. Can you speak a little more then on why starving yourself is bad?
Well, can we just pop up a level, Jamie? I love that you phrased it that way. Yeah. Because we live in a culture where it's like, hey, why is starvation bad? Okay, yeah. So starvation, it's like, why is a fever bad? Like, starvation by definition means you don't have enough fuel to live your mission, right? So it's like saying, why is not putting fuel in your car's gas tank a bad approach to getting to your destination, right? Like, well, you can't get there, right? So starvation fundamentally doesn't work because it takes obesity is a disease. This is now widely recognized in scientific communities that actually understand obesity at a metabolic level, rather than just thinking about it like a moral issue. So much like diabetes is a disease, or the definition of a disease is if you look at people that have it, you can see consistent and predictable biological markers that you can say, like, yep, if those are there, these other physical symptoms will happen. And that's the case with obesity. That's the case with diabetes. That's the case with hypertension. So starvation can't cure that disease ever. It's like if you have a clog in your sink and your sink is overflowing, you could stop putting water in your sink, but that doesn't unclog the sink, right?
Yes,
if you have a fever, you can starve your body of energy. You can get into an ice bath and you will lower your body temperature, but you still have a fever. So the reason that starvation dieting doesn't work, besides the fact that it's just a ridiculous approach, because it would be like saying, hey, you have a fever, we'll just sit in the ice bath. Well, I can't stay in an ice bath, so that's a ridiculous suggestion. Starvation, you can't starve yourself long term, so it's going to fail. But besides that, it doesn't actually cure the underlying cause. It doesn't fix the system. It just deprives the broken system of energy.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of people I've had come through over the years, and that's the mindset of starving themselves. They're like, why wouldn't this work? Like, it makes complete sense. And it's such a like straightforward mindset that so many people have, like, oh, I need to lose weight, I'll just starve myself. And just to educate people more on this issue is so imperative, I think, in our culture. And with, information like you're providing with your book, it's getting out there a little better. The idea to not put yourself in this state, which is kind of horrific. So when people tend to lose, like people, they'll try to go on these like crash diets, they'll lose as much weight as possible, as quick as, right away. Why do people gain more weight back after this scenario?
Before I answer that question, Jamie, one quick preface, which is the reason people continue to do this and then continue to then yo-yo diet as you're describing here is because it, quote unquote, works.
Right,
I mean,
right.
in a sense where it's, if you have a bunch of weeds in your garden and you pour gasoline all over your garden, like the weeds will go away, but you kill everything else, right? Like, so that's kind of the problem is if you don't care about your future or you don't care about your health or you're on a television show where you make hundreds of thousands of dollars if you lose weight rapidly with no other consequences, then yes, you should starve yourself. And frankly, there's all sorts of other things, like you could take amphetamines and you could wear a rubber tracksuit and you could do all kinds of stuff, but it's terrible for you.
Absolutely.
So we've got to focus on health as well. Why do you gain more weight back than when you lost? Well, this has to do with the metabolic slowdown that takes place. We talked about earlier, this has to do with burning off the muscle tissue, but it also has to do with even deeper hormonal and neurological changes that take place, which is the body now believes that it is in a risky state, right? So imagine, let's use a financial metaphor really quickly. If you've been alive for the past 20 years or more, you might be a little trigger shy to invest money in certain stocks and securities because you're like, oh my gosh, there's a chance that it could all go away at some point,
Absolutely.
right? So you spend less when you have a fear that there could be a shortage of stuff coming in, right? So your body's really, really smart. It does the same kind of thing. So if it's like, I've been starved horrifically in the past, well, you better believe that I am going to store as much as I can and then I'm going to burn as little as I can to anticipate future shortages.
I think the last I read, I think it was 90% of the participants on these weight loss network shows ended up gaining all their weight back and then some, especially like some of the winners. Not mentioning the name of these shows, but people know what we're talking about here. So referring to like the hormone issue, what's the role specifically of things like insulin and leptin and how they impact everything?
Each hormone has a much different story behind it. So, and insulin and leptin are two of the most talked about, but certainly there is a plethora of additional ones. Those looking at those two specifically, and insulin is neither good nor bad, right? Like insulin is portrayed as this terrible thing in certain circles, but if you don't have insulin, you will die.
Yes.
It's called type 1 diabetes, actually. So type 1 diabetes is you don't have any insulin, and that's a big problem. And it used to kill a lot of people before we thought to inject with external insulin. So insulin is what allows carbohydrate and protein to be utilized in your body. So if you want to have energy in the form of glucose get into your cells, you have to have insulin. So it's just like a key.
Yeah.
Too much insulin is bad, just like too much of anything is bad. If you inject yourself with testosterone and you have too much testosterone, that's bad too. If So that's what insulin does. Too much of it is bad. Too much of anything is bad. Leptin, one of its key roles it is released in your body proportionate to the amount of body fat that you have. And one of its purposes is it's meant to be a signal to your brain to say, hey, am I at my set point? Am I below it? Am I above it? So that your brain can then regulate appetite and calorie burn accordingly. So if you are metabolically healthy and you ate a gigantic breakfast, so you ate like just super calorie dense foods, you will be less hungry the rest of the day because your brain will say, hey, look, you took in 1,200 calories before noon. That's fine. You're just going to eat less the rest of the day.
Right.
And what's really interesting is leptin is a great example of how these metabolic dysfunctions take place in individuals who struggle with their weight. For example, researchers have looked at humans that are chronically obese, and they found that they have over 25 times the normal levels of leptin circulating in their bloodstream. So it's not that they have a shortage of leptin. Their body's trying to say, you have all this fat stored. But then their brain, what they find is the receptors in their brain that are supposed to hear that hormone and do something based upon it have become blocked. Yeah. So the body just keeps on saying, hey, I've got leptin, leptin, leptin. Same thing happens with insulin. It's called insulin resistance. And now these hormones, these signals to your brain and body to help balance calories automatically don't do their job.
Yeah, it's amazing if you see someone who's quite obese, say, 75, 80 pounds overweight. It's interesting why these people are ever hungry, if you think about it, with that amount of, storage potentially. When people are going into the weight loss pursuits and whatever, people start to turn to some of these like horrific, like snack pack little weight loss, 100 calorie cardboard chocolate flavored crap. Talk to us about what sane foods are.
So do you want sane foods, or do you want me to go on a little rant about 100 calorie snack packs for a second? I can do both.
Both. Go nuts.
Okay. So the 100 calorie snack packs are ridiculous for two reasons. The first is that if you're hungry, you can't trick that, right? Like if your body is saying, I need energy and I need nutrition, you're not going to deceive it. So right. if your body needs 400 calories to do what it needs to do, and it needs vitamin C and it needs vitamin D and it needs amino acids, it's going to need that until it gets it.
Right.
So if you eat a 100 calorie snack pack that doesn't give you enough energy and doesn't give you enough nutrients, you're just going to need to eat a lot of those snack packs because you're not going to trick your body, right? So the other problem with 100 calorie snack packs is they're garbage food. They're insane. And this will be a good transition into sane, where they don't provide us with that which is essential for human health and well-being. They actually provide us that which is addictive and toxic, and that which causes the neurological and digestive and hormonal underpinnings of obesity. So this then segues into, well, so you said insane. What does that mean? The fundamental issue with calories and the focus on calories is they point us in the direction of a quantity focus. Mm-hmm. How many calories are you eating? How many calories are you burning? And using that logic, companies like McDonald's can say, hey, look, we have a bunch of items on our menu that are under 400 calories. So by definition, all of that pink slime and high fructose corn syrup and gluten is good for you because everything in moderation, right? Yeah. And then you've got companies like Weight Watchers that are worth $1.5 billion. And their whole claim to fame is, look, you can eat whatever you want as long as you don't eat more than 800 calories and you'll be skinny. Okay. Yeah. I mean, but you'll also die. Yeah. So that's probably not the best approach. So what SANE does is it says, so the alternative to saying count calories historically has been eat healthy food. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is if you ask 10 people what's healthy food, you're going to get 10 different answers, right? Ask a person who's paleo versus a person who's Atkins versus a person who's vegan, what's healthy? Good luck, right? So what we need to look at science and not opinion and not theory and not ideology and say, what is it that actually determines whether or not something is quality, meaning it provides us, our body, with what our body needs and doesn't have detrimental effects. So SANE is an acronym for the 4 factors that determine if something causes human thriving or if something causes human suffering. So the S stands for satiety. Mm-hmm. That's how quickly a calorie or a food item fills us up and keeps us full. So we want to eat more satisfying foods. So Pringles, for example, which tell us that once you pop, you can't stop.
Can't stop. No.
It's telling us that these calories will make you hungrier, right? They have
Right.
low satiety, so that's bad. The A stands for aggression. That's the hormonal impact of foods. We want to minimize the negative hormonal impact of food. The N is nutrition. That's how many essential nutrients. So vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fatty acids. Sugar is not an essential nutrient. There's no such thing as an essential sugar. There's a reason that term doesn't exist. So how many essential nutrients does this food provide us relative to garbage? So a sugar cereal isn't healthy because it's had vitamins injected into it, because we have to look at the good relative to the bad, not just the presence of the good. That's also why, and I know I'm going fast here, but hopefully folks can listen to this a couple times. That's also why 10 donuts aren't 10 times more nutritious than one donut, right? Because along with 10 more, yes, it's true, you get 10 times more vitamin C from 10 donuts than you do from one. But you also get 10 times more nonsense. So we all get this intuitively. So we want nutrition, and then the E is efficiency. And different sources of energy are more or less efficiently used or stored by the body. So for example, protein is not a good energy source. In fact, it isn't an energy source. If you eat a bunch of it, your body will convert it into glucose, which is a sugar, which can be burnt as energy. But protein in and of itself is not an energy source. It's a structural component. So if you trade, for example, low quality sugar calories or low quality processed fat calories for more protein calories, you will almost always burn body fat because you're shifting the composition of the fuel that's going into your body. You're eating fuel that is less efficient at being stored as fat, and therefore you end up burning fat. So sane foods are satisfying, unaggressive, nutritious, inefficient. They're packed with water, fiber, and protein. And ironically, they are the things you find directly in nature. That doesn't mean that everything found in nature is sane. For example, tobacco is found in nature, is very insane. But, science does seem to mesh with common sense, which is a good sign.
Touching on the protein, can you speak a little on the issue of muscle protein synthesis and how effective that is at actually being burnt just in the process of digesting and processing it?
There's two important burning of calories components to protein and efficiency. So the first is that there's this thing called dietary induced thermogenesis, or DIT. And most individuals burn about 10% of the calories they do over the course of the day just taking food and turning it into something that your body can do something with, right? Like we don't have little pieces of carrot circulating around in our bloodstream. A bunch of metabolic alchemy has to take place.
Right.
And when you eat protein, there's just a lot more steps that have to happen. So when you eat protein, your body uses it to rebuild your body. And then if there's stuff left over, then it has to get converted into sugar. That chemical transformation burns a bunch of energy. And then if there's more sugar than your body needs to fuel itself, then it goes through another chemical change. It turns into fat or triglyceride. That again burns a bunch of calories. So just eating, like if you ate 2,000 calories of protein, that would be very bad. So don't do that. But just theoretically, if you did that, or I'm sorry, let's say you ate 5,000 calories of protein and that's all you ate, and you took another person, an identical twin, and you fed them 5,000 calories of carbohydrate or fat, so you overfed them, but from different macronutrients, you would see way different gains in body fat because of the efficiency of the storage of those fuel sources. So that's the burning aspect, but there's also so how easily can your body use protein? Then there's this other thing where when you eat certain doses of protein and you get certain amino acids up to a certain level in your bloodstream, your body will actually synthesize new protein. So it will take the protein you've eaten and it will say, hey, I've got enough raw material here. Let's rebuild some cells. Let's build a new body. So we often think that the only way that one person can build another person, which sounds a little weird, but that's what pregnancy is, right? One person is building another person. What we don't realize is that everyone, men included, can actually rebuild themselves. Like we can regenerate our own cells. And this is called muscle protein synthesis. And when you trigger it, this is what we used to think that weight training was the only way to do this, but now we know that eating sufficient quantities of protein does this. You will actually rebuild your own proteins in your body. And to do this, why did I bring up the baby example? Well, we know that pregnant women need to eat a lot to facilitate building a new person, right? When people trigger muscle protein synthesis, that process of building a new you can burn anywhere from 5 to 700 calories per day, researchers estimate. I mean, it can go up to 1/3 of your total daily calorie burn. So to fuel that process, you have to eat an immense number of calories, or you can eat an immense number of calories because you're building a new you. And this in part explains why you have bodybuilders who, I mean, let's say natural bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So they're not taking a bunch of hormones, but they're still eating 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories per day while maintaining 6% body fat. You know, there's a bunch of other metabolic processes going on below the surface that are causing their calories out to be so high. And that also shows you why spending all this time on the treadmill is a little bit ridiculous,
Right.
because if just eating more protein can cause you to burn 700 calories per day, like, get off the treadmill and eat some protein.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
Absolutely. So you recommend so we're looking at kind of like what would make up a person's dinner plate, ideally. You recommend a plant-based diet. So not vegan, but plant-based. So what should this look like if you're, looking at a plate as a whole?
Plant-based in my world means that the vast majority of foods in terms of volume that are going into your mouth are from plants.
Yeah.
So it is plant-based in that sense. And if you look at the dinner plate, you will see that. So half of the dinner plate will be non-starchy vegetables. So these are vegetables you could eat raw. You don't have to eat them raw. In fact, most people shouldn't eat them raw because they'll think they're disgusting and not eat them. But for example, corn and potatoes can't be eaten raw. Those are not non-starchy vegetables. So just think to yourself, could I eat this raw? The answer is no, it's not a non-starchy vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
So half your plate is non-starchy vegetables, hopefully a lot of which are green. And then about 1/3 of your plate is going to be nutrient-dense protein. And the highest quality sources in terms of the protein that can be most utilized by your body are going to come from animals or seafood. So humanely raised animals, wild-caught seafood, ideally, and there are certain low-sugar forms of dairy like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, which can work.
Yeah.
And then the balance of your calories, are going to come from whole food fats, so think nuts and seeds or eggs, and then low-sugar fruits, so things like berries and citrus.
Awesome. I want to start winding down here. You gave a phenomenal TED Talk called "Can Superman End Diabetes?" And I know this is a whole huge topic, and I'll link up the video on the show notes for this episode. But can you just touch on this a little? It's very powerful video, and just about the connection with sugar kind of being the new tobacco.
There was a really profound study done. Oh my gosh, it was in either 2014 or 2013 where I'll try to do this as quickly as I can. So you can never prove causality when it comes to human nutrition because there's too many variables, right? So we've never actually proven that smoking causes lung cancer, but we have enough super strong correlation data that we're like, okay, there's such a strong correlation so consistently that it's fair to say that smoking causes lung cancer. But we all know people who smoke and don't get lung cancer, right? So there was a study done that involved, oh my gosh, I forget the exact number, but lots of countries, like 100 and something. And they did these deep quantitative analyses, and they found that there is as strong of a correlation between added sugar consumption and incidence of diabetes as there is between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer.
Right.
So we don't say smoke in moderation, right? Ever. We're just like, look, smoking is bad. And to the extent that you cannot do it, that's good. It doesn't mean that if you smoke, you will definitely get lung cancer. But if you don't want lung cancer, don't just smoke shorter cigarettes. Like, don't smoke cigarettes. Same thing applies with sugar, but that's not what we're told. We're told sugar in moderation, or, it's just a fun indulgence. Well, yeah, and if you just smoke socially once a week, you probably won't get lung cancer, but we don't tell people to do that. So we need to start looking at sugar in the same way, which is, look, it's not good in any dose. It is addictive. So we need to rethink the way we present that to our children, especially.
Absolutely. Everyone has to watch this video. Like I said, I'll put it up on the show notes, but you can also search for the TED Talks, Can Superman End Diabetes? Really important that people read this. So finishing up here, where can people follow you, see what you're doing, keep up to date, all that sort of stuff?
please pop over to Sane Solution. So SANE Solution. There's no S on the end. SaneSolution.com. That's where we're putting together some amazing programs and tools and resources to help people increase the quality of what they eat and to heal their relationship with food rather than to starve themselves and to fear food.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll link this up on the show notes too. So to finish off, a few quick rapid fire questions I like to do. Favorite movie?
The Matrix, the first one.
Nice. Favorite TV show?
Friday Night Lights.
Nice. Favorite book, either nutrition or non-nutrition?
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Sweet. Favorite music or artist?
Oh, it's hard to say overall.
Yeah. These are the hard-hitting questions right here.
Oh yeah, overall, because it's for me, music is totally mood-based.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, if I just had to say overall, it would be Armin van Buuren.
Okay.
And just his DJ sets.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, last one. If you can only eat one food or meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Is it food or meal? Because those are two different things.
Let's go meal.
Okay, meal. Salmon would be the protein, and sautéed kale or some other hearty green, and then macadamia nuts, and then some sort of healthy sweet. So something that was like cocoa based, which used a stevia or a lohango, because I got to have something sweet at the end.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks so much for doing this, Jonathan. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Okay, amazing stuff. I want to thank Jonathan again for being here and sharing a ton of great information. And I think this is one of those episodes you could go back and listen to a few times just to really ingrain this information in yourself, because like the book says, there's been this calorie myth, and our idea of how our body works and how it deals with calories and stuff like that is so been outdated and incorrect. And you really want to expose yourself to this new information and new education and how your body works, how it's dealing with the foods that you introduce into it, things you want to be avoiding, things you want to be including. And because there's so much good information, I really think it's one of those episodes you want to go back to a few times and just really soak it all in. And that's the beauty of these podcasts, is that once you download it, it's there. You can refer back to it at any point. I do that with tons of different podcasts myself. And all the stuff we're talking about today and the Calorie Math book and everything about Jonathan, you can check out on the show notes. So if you go to regainedwellness.com/039, that'll have all that information right there. So we get you all up and running and everything like that. So if you have any questions on, health, nutrition, if there's things you want to see covered on the podcast or questions I can answer, you can email to info@regainedwellness.com. Check all that social media the kids are so big on. So, Facebook's Regain Wellness. Facebook.com/regainedwellness. Don't want to upset them. That could get really bad. And Twitter as well. I love Twitter. I'm on there all the time. Good way to interact. The handle is @regainedwellness. So this time it's REGAIN wellness, just because they restrict the number of characters you can use, because that's their thing. That's what they do. And if you haven't already, head over to the website, regainedwellness.com. If you haven't joined the email newsletter already, I encourage you to do that. And when you do sign up, I send you off a free ebook I did that's called the Health Eating Starter Kit. And it's got some information, again, on some things you want to be including and avoiding. And it's got some recipes and all that good stuff. So I'll hook you right up with that. You can get that by going to regainedwellness.com/guide. Or if you're just on the main page, you can see the sign-up form and get you all started. So with the whole pursuit of your health, your wellness, your fitness, your nutrition, everything, it's not always going to go perfectly. The idea is to keep one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. And remember, it's that idea of progress and not perfection. See you next time.